Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me in this video. I'm going to talk about Betsy's timeline with the help of tarot cards, and I would like to share some other things with you as well. To start with, I have a beautiful deck. I have countless beautiful decks, but this one is very special. This is the Tarot Under the Oak. And yesterday was a very warm day here at my place, unusually warm, and I went out at a beautiful place. The scene is not spring-like yet because there are no leaves, but I took this deck with myself out there so as to fill it up with the energies of nature, because this is how I wanted to use it. Right about Betsy and her timeline. So we are after the press conference. Today is the 10th of March and the press conference took place on the 7th of March, and I must say my jaw dropped when I first heard about hantavirus. When I heard the medical experts starting to talk about hantavirus, and weird enough, but in my native language, which is Hungarian, we have the word hanta, which means lies. And when someone talks hantas, we have such an expression. Talking hantas, it means lying. But obviously this is not why I felt that. Something felt off with that press conference, and if you are following the story, maybe you have felt like that as well, as I have seen people commenting since then. So yes, there are people that believe that hantavirus was the reason. This is the rate in percentage of hantavirus diseases in the US for the last 30 years. Yearly rate. So almost zero. And they even say if it occurs among farmers, agricultural workers and homeless people. So anyway, I am not buying the hantavirus part of it, but it makes sense if Betsy was sick. Anyway, what I would like to talk about, so even at the press conference, they are talking a lot about hantavirus and how to clear out the virus, what to do, how to use the sanitizer, how to wash your rubber gloves with soap, and how to wash your hands and whatever. Okay, it was weird, but alright. But if she was sick, if Betsy got ill, it would explain the presence of the heater in the bathroom. So if she had fever, it would explain why the heater, the portable heater, was in the bathroom. And if she rushed in the bathroom, or it was a bad step, or she kicked in the heater, it would explain why it was toppled. So going back to the timeline, what we know from the sheriff himself about Betsy's timeline, it is that on the 9th of February, she picked up the dog from a veterinary hospital because the dog had a surgery. This was the dog that was found deceased. Zina was her name, and she was 12 years old, so not a young dog. And I had a feeling, and I think I even mentioned it in the first reading, that I think the dog was locked up for safety reasons. So yes, I can imagine that because the dog was right after a surgery, they locked her up in a kennel for the night hours so that she shouldn't walk in and out, and so that she can have a better rest. So on the 9th of February, Betsy picked up the pup from the veterinary hospital. I would say it demands strength. I don't know what the size of this dog was. We have a kitty that weighs 6 kilograms, and with a carrier it is almost 10 kilograms. And when I have to take him out, it demands energy and power to manage it. So it's not that easy, even if I use a car. Betsy also used a car, but it's still demanding. And if one is that sick, they are not really able to do that, or they ask someone for help. So I would assume she was not sick on the 9th of February. I would also assume that if she had been in a bad condition, then the vets would have seen it. Then 2 days later, on the 11th of February, we know it from the sheriff, she had an email conversation with her massage therapist. We don't know the content of their conversation, so we don't know if there was an appointment or if it was just a regular chat or if she asked for advice or whatever. We don't know anything about it. What we know is that around noon, sometime before noon, she had an email conversation with her massage therapist. Then also from that day, from the 11th of February, we know it from the sheriff that Betsy was seen at the Sprouts Farmers Market from 3:30 p.m. till 4:15 p.m., so 45 minutes. She was shopping. The sheriff says she was going here and there. And he says his investigators went through all the surveillance footage and she doesn't look like having stamina issues or breathing problems, so she's not seen wheezing or being short of breath or feeling bad. And obviously if she was doing the shopping and if she spent 45 minutes at the market, there must have been people she talked with, like she buys fruits or vegetables, she walks around here and there, she pays, she just changes a few words with the seller, so there should have been someone to notice if she was short of breath or she had problems with holding herself together. And I'm going to tell you why I am talking about it. And then she went in the pharmacy, which is next to the market, right next to the market, and she spent 8 minutes at the pharmacy where she definitely had to talk with the pharmacist. And the sheriff says they don't know if she went there for advice or if she bought something. Obviously they know, just they can't or don't want to talk about it. But at least the pharmacist should have noticed or should have known if she didn't feel well. And they asked it directly from the sheriff if she mentioned it to anyone that she didn't feel good. And the sheriff says no. She didn't say anything like that. So it makes me conclude that that day she was fine. And yes, if we spend 54 minutes walking here and there doing the shopping, and then after leaving the pharmacy, she went to a pet food store. So she bought pet food as well. If we are that sick and we are short of breath, we just don't do this. And I am saying this because the coroner says her cause of death was respiratory failure, lung failure, and the sheriff says it's reasonable to think that she passed away on the 11th of February, so the same day when she was walking around doing her errands at least for 3 hours. Because the remote device that is at the gate where they live, because they lived at a gated area, it gave a signal at 5:15 p.m. So let's say she arrives home at 5:30. She has to pack out. She goes in, she checks on her husband, she checks on the pup that has just had a surgery, she checks on the other dogs, she gives them food or water or whatever, she talks a bit with her husband, she sits down a bit, she has a drink or she starts to cook. I know it from myself, so when I am away for 3 hours, or maybe even more, doing the shopping, going at several places, and when I come home I usually need, I would say I always need some 20 minutes just to sit down and bring myself back into my chores, into my home feelings, packing out, having a drink, tea or coffee. I usually like to drink something hot, giving food to our kitty, talking a bit with my family, and if after that I start cooking, I have to get prepared for cooking in my mind, making dinner. So when I come home from shopping, let's say I need half an hour till I can start cooking. And let's not forget that she had 3 pups, out of which one was just operated on, and a 95-year-old husband. So it's not like, okay, I came back home from shopping and doing my errands and I am rushing to the computer to check the emails. At least for me, this is something among the last things I do when I come back from a lengthy shopping. Another thing, this is also maybe just me, but when I am sick, when I don't feel well, it typically happens that I do not even open my laptop for days, for 3-4 days. Last time it happened last November that I didn't even open my computer for 4 days because I had a stomach virus, and it was not extremely bad, but it drained my energy so much that I literally didn't want to burden my brain with opening my laptop and reading anything because I didn't have energy for that. I just wanted to stay in bed or stay in the bathtub. Besides, I had to clean our home, I had to care for our kitty, I had to cook as much as I could, though it happened that we ordered food. So I know it from myself that it happens that there are days, literally days, when I don't even open my computer, when I feel weak or sick. It rarely happens, but it happens. And I'm a lot younger than Betsy, and I don't have a 95-year-old person to care for, someone with Alzheimer, as they say it. I wonder if his condition was really that bad, because if Betsy could leave him alone for at least 3 hours, or maybe even more, but at least 3 hours, I wonder if his mental condition was really that bad. Because with very, very bad Alzheimer, as the medical experts said, it was a very severe condition. So as I know, they don't leave patients with very strong and severe Alzheimer alone, not even for an hour. Because there was a gas stove there, electricity in the house, whatever. So I don't think she would have left him alone for such long hours, especially with a vulnerable pup at home, if his condition had been that bad. And if his condition wasn't that bad, so if he was able to be on his own for at least 3 hours with a vulnerable pup, I don't think he wouldn't be able to realize that something bad happened to Betsy. Maybe this was the case, yes, we can't know, but if she could leave him alone for hours, then approach it from that direction. So let's think of a 3-year-old child. You will not leave a 3 or 4-year-old child unattended for at least 3 hours. And we don't expect a 3 or 4-year-old child to be able to call the ambulance. We can leave an 8 or 9-year-old child alone for 1 or 2 hours, explaining it to them that you mustn't touch the stove, you can watch a cartoon, or whatever, you can do this or that. You can, but you mustn't do this or that. And if anything happens, call mom or dad, and you have to press or touch this button. And here I would like to tell you about a story that happened here in my country almost 3 years ago. There was a celebrity whose life was a big mess actually, but he was loved by many, and he had 2 children from 2 women. The youngest one was still a baby when it happened, but he and his second wife no longer lived together. And he usually took the child he had with his first wife. He usually took that child at his place. He adored that little girl, and the little girl adored him as well. And they loved to spend time together. So it was a special day because the younger child was exactly 6 months old that day, and his estranged second wife, even got half a cake made, and they celebrated this special day that the child was 6 months old that day with that very cute half a cake. And we don't know what exactly happened. I remember I pulled a spread for him because I had the feeling that he overdosed himself and they were denying him using drugs or whatever. Later on, it turned out that quite strong drugs were really found in his home. Anyway, what happened is that he went home after celebrating the 6 months anniversary of the baby. More exactly, he went to pick up his other child, who was 8 years old back then. He made dinner for the little girl, they were cooking together, and the next day was a school day for the little girl. Then the little girl went to bed. Father was supposed to take her to school the following morning, which never happened because the little girl woke up and she started to look for her dad, and she could find her dad lying on the floor out at the balcony. And she was trying to wake him up, but he was already dead, so she couldn't wake him up, but she didn't know that he was dead. She just went in the apartment. It was a very touching story. She came out with blankets and she covered her dad with these blankets because she said dad was cold. And she took the phone, her dad's phone, and she dialed the last number that was on the list, and that was the psychotherapist of her father. Again, this little girl was 8 years old. So she called that woman and she said, I can't wake daddy up and he is very cold. So she was not aware of her dad being dead, but she could feel that his body was very cold, so she put blankets on him. So an 8-year-old child knows what to do or how to use the phone. We still have to teach them. I'm just saying that obviously there are stages and phases in development, and there are stages and phases in Alzheimer as well. And in a very last stage or in a very advanced stage, I know that they are unable to use phones, but in such a late stage, I would say it's impossible to leave them alone for 3 hours or even more. And I don't think Betsy would have left him alone for long hours if he was in such a last and such a bad stage of Alzheimer. Another thing, so for her, he was the everything. They were together for 41 years, regardless of the big age gap. So they got together when she was 24, and from then on, her life was around him and about him. She was a concert pianist, but she stopped playing at concerts after they got together. And then they married when she was 31. And back then, when they got married, he already had heart issues, not so severe ones, but he already had higher blood pressure and he refrained from Hollywood. And it was a conscious choice of theirs to move in Santa Fe and to live a very private life at an almost secluded place, although they had neighbors and they frequently went out. I even read stories about the two of them loving to drive, and both of them had their own cars and they went at places in 2 cars because he wanted to drive as well and she wanted him to drive as well, so that his brain stays active, and that they went out at places where she loved to walk around or go on shorter hikes, and he used to sit in his car because he was not so active physically, but he was in a good shape for a very long time, and she was sort of forcing him to do yoga lessons and tai chi, biking, whatever. And even a year before their death, he was seen riding his bike. At the age of 94, he was still seen riding his bike, which is quite a rare thing. So he was in a very good condition and very good shape for a very long time. And his children say it was thanks to Betsy because she took very good care of him. At the same time, she had the freedom to go shopping, to arrange for the pubs. She had her own business with a lady So she was not secluded from society. She met people, she talked with them, so they had a very private life, but she was protecting him, she was protecting their private life as well. And at the same time, she was and had to be, and most probably wanted to be, active. Yet, we do all this, even if we love the other one to the core. Caring for an elderly person is never easy, and they had those 3 dogs. And caring for pets, it demands regular attention and responsibility, huge responsibility as well. And they say she hasn't talked to her mom since last October on. If his health, if his medical condition started to intensely decline, I can understand if it got too much for her. So if we think of having a mom that is 91 years old with very strong Alzheimer, and a partner that is 95 years old with strong Alzheimer, or just he's getting old and his heart is getting weaker and weaker, and living in such a big house, doing everything. They had no cleaner staff in the house, although they had these maintenance workers. But she was the only one that was cleaning that house, that went shopping, that arranged for this or that took the pup to the vet. She went out for a massage, whatever, and it demands energy. And when the health of the beloved one starts to decline, I am sure it causes depression, and also because she knows that day by day they are getting closer to the time when he passes away, because he is old and his health is declining. Anyway, so going back to lung failure or respiratory failure, it doesn't happen like this. So if someone is that active in the afternoon, respiratory failure, it is preceded by a series and variety of symptoms. Respiratory failure is preceded by coughing, being short of breath, wheezing, drowsiness, extreme fatigue, weakness, often dizziness, often headache. So these are visible symptoms, and no one said they had experienced anything like this in Betsy that day. And let's assume she goes home after a busy afternoon. She arrives home at 5:30 p.m. and she doesn't open her email. And what is wrong in that, or what is that strange in that? She packs out, she sits down for a while, they talk a bit, she checks on the pup, she gives them food, she gives them water, she starts to prepare dinner. It takes time, and by the time she is done with everything, it can even be, 8 p.m. or 7:30 p.m. if she is in a hurry. And if she is tired, at least when I am tired, it happens that I don't open my emails. I will open it next day. So what I want to say is that if one dies of respiratory failure, so how can they say she died that day when at 5 p.m. everything was still okay? No coughing, no wheezing, not being short of breath, not struggling. She was actively doing her errands and she was driving. Another thing, the sheriff says they don't have the necropsy results of the pup. Why not? Or why to hold a press conference without such crucial data? Another thing, the coroner says at the moment of the autopsy, there was no food in Jean's stomach. And she doesn't say a word about Betsy's stomach. She doesn't mention if there was food in Betsy's stomach or not. But she mentions it twice very clearly that Jean was not dehydrated. So he was able to get water, and she doesn't mention that it takes from 2 to 4 hours for the stomach to get empty after eating. It depends on the speed of digestion and on the food itself. But maximum 4 hours after eating, the stomach is already empty. that there was no food in his stomach, it means prior to his death, he didn't eat for a period from 2 to 4 hours. But she doesn't say if the intestines contained anything, so she doesn't say all his digestive system was empty, just that there was no food in his stomach. People are already talking about him starving. It doesn't mean he was starving, and he was not dehydrated. And the medical expert also says they couldn't determine the exact time of death for either of them because of the mummification, just because Jean's pacemaker showed activity on the 18th of February. They think this was the last day when he was alive, and because Betsy didn't open emails from the 11th of February on, they say it was her last day. Now, going back to what I wanted to show you from this lovely deck. So I asked Tarot directly about Betsy's days from the 11th of February on after going home from shopping. So I have asked cards for the 11th of February, then for the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th. So all for these days, and you will see what it says. But it doesn't show her passing on the 11th of February. I would assume she was sick, yes. And this is why she couldn't care for Jean. But this is the card for the 11th of February after arriving home from shopping. This is the Two of Cups. This is the card of love. You can see the deer and the little girl and this peaceful environment. So it is not about death. For the 12th of February, this is the Hierophant, again a deer. It's interesting that hantavirus is spread by deer mouse. So if she was infected with hantavirus, it can even be that she got infected that day, or that she started to feel something like she was not okay that day. But if this is when her symptoms started, it takes days that it causes respiratory failure. So it can be that she started to feel weak when she got home, or when she finished with everything, or she exhausted herself because of the long shopping, and that she really got tired, and this is why she didn't open the emails anymore. So we have the Hierophant card again with a deer for the 12th of February, which doesn't show her passing. Its basic meaning is marriage anyway. So we can see a key on that stone throne. The key usually means we don't have the key to something, or that we should learn, or we are just finding something. So as if she was just finding out or realizing that she's getting sick. For the 11th of February, I would say she didn't mention she was sick because she didn't feel sick and she didn't look sick. And she wasn't sick yet. On the next day, I would say this is when she started to feel that maybe it's not just exhaustion or tiredness, but something else. Now, it's interesting, but for the 13th of February, 9 of Wands, you see, it shows a fire on top of the head of this girl. And I would say it means a hot forehead, high fever. Also, fears. That figure in the back means fears, that she starts to get scared if she feels that she has fever. I wonder if anything like that was found. I don't know the name of that thing in English, but that equipment with the help of which you measure body temperature. So if there was anything like that showing high body temperature, so I would say from these cards, I would say she started to feel weaker on the 12th of February, and that on the 13th of February she had fever. It doesn't show her passing. For the 14th of February, Tarot shows this King of Pentacles. It makes me feel it actually shows Jean being okay, I would say. So most probably not moving too much, but feeling okay, feeling safe. So it doesn't show struggling. Also, the Page of Cups for the 15th of February, it doesn't show struggling. So I would say she had fever or she felt weak, but it was not affecting Jean yet. Then we have this very special card for the 16th of February, which shows the candles on top of the head of the girls and that fire behind her. So as compared to this 9 of Wands, it means higher fever, and in the succession they are the 9 of Wands and the 10 of Wands. So I would say by the 16th of February she had very high fever. So for me it would explain why she doesn't open the emails, and she hopes she can cope with it. So this was the 16th of February. And interesting, but for the 17th of February, the Knight of Pentacles actually shows her getting stronger. And you can read about it on the internet, but yes, they say the mortality rate is very high in case of hantavirus infection, but it is very high because it's so rare that there is 0.1 person a year that gets sick. In percentage, this is the percentage. In Santa Fe, according to their statistics, 1 person per 10 years gets sick. Okay, so let's say mortality rate is 38%. It means 1 person of 3 dies in 30 years. So see beyond this high mortality. Okay, it's not that it infects everyone and 38 people out of 100 die, because there are 3 patients with hantavirus infection in 30 years. But they say it on the internet that if one survives the critical tough days, these tough days when there are tough symptoms, so they don't say it's lethal, but it can be fatal. But if one survives, so there are cases, so it can be survived. If one survives this tough phase, then they heal within some weeks. So they don't say it can't be survived. And this Knight of Coins tells me she was actually getting better. And the 2 of Wands is for the 18th of February. And you can see the bear and the little girl going somewhere together. And it's nighttime, they have their candles, there is fire behind them, so I would say leaving the fire behind, leaving the fever behind, and maybe just leaving everything behind. So if there is anything that shows passing away here out of all these cards, it is this very last card, and it shows 2 figures. So I would say they died on the same day, and the reason for her not opening her emails was because she felt weak and she was really sick. If it was really hantavirus, I am not buying that part, but I would be curious to know if they were calling each other, or if Betsy was calling Jean to check on him, for example, if she was lying in bed just to check on him if he's okay or if he needs anything. So if there was communication between them within the house, if she was unable to care for him for a while, I would be curious to know. I don't think we will ever know the truth. I insist on what tarot says because tarot is a very clear tool, and 41 years, this is 41 years, and deep love and caring. So actually I would absolutely understand even such a thing. Recovering from an illness, feeling absolutely exhausted and facing her biggest fear ever, losing her most beloved person. My thoughts only, but this is how I see it. So what I think is that something happened to him while she couldn't care for him, and these are the 3 cards for Jean. The King of Swords, the 7 of Cups, and the Knight of Swords. Interesting that we have the King of Swords and Knight of Swords here. So I'm sorry for this, but when she found him, he was like this King of Swords, not moving, his body being cold. 7 of Cups, it often means pills, that he couldn't take his pills for a day or 2 when she was unable to care for him, and that it contributed to his heart failure. And these are the 3 cards for Betsy for the last moments. And this is the 5 of Cups again. This card was here several times, which means grieving. Many cards show night scenes. It also shows a night scene, this 5 of Cups. 5 of Wands, which is about struggling, and I wonder if for her the struggle was about trying to warm him up, and if she was trying to take the portable heater, if he was not dead yet, but she was trying to heat him up when he passed away. And the 9 of Swords is the last card for her, and it was here in several readings as well. It means fear and feeling guilty with all this, because they had 41 years together in love. I would say in the deepest love they could imagine. With all this, I say I am happy that they passed together and that they are together. Alright, thank you for staying with me in this long video, and stay well, all of you. Bye bye.